Sharon and I filmed a critique of each other's paintings, and in this video, we want to share with you our process. We got together in early April and did an initial critique. Then, we each worked on our paintings based on what the other person had suggested. What we want to share with you in this video is the first critique and then show you the new version of the painting and our thoughts on the changes that were made. We filmed this in my basement studio using a MacBook to record us and an iPad to film the critiqued painting on an easel. In this video, I critiqued two of Sharon's paintings and used the digital painting program Procreate to explain my thoughts. Sharon brought along her trusty laser pointer to show problems and changes. So what we want to do is we're going to share with you then our images of before, and we'll talk about the changes then that we suggested, and then we'll put up the after images and then talk about the changes we made and how it worked, and just again want to share the process with you guys. So we'll get started. Okay, so here is the original image by Sharon.
And the backstory for this is I'm painting in Smoky Mountains at a river, one of my happy places, and I really just wanted to do a good study of water, moving water, and what it looks like as it moves and goes over and through the rocks. And there's no better way to do that than from life. So that was my intent, and naturally you're composing on the spot too. But I knew once I got it done, it seemed like there was a lot going on, and I needed that second pair of eyes to really look at it objectively. So Vianna helped me really break it down and see things in a new light. So I'll let Vianna take it from here.
Okay, so I have a time-lapse recording actually of the critique that we did because I'm doing this on Procreate, and what happens is any of these changes that I make here will be automatically recorded onto the time-lapse, but I'll just point out a couple big things. So of course Sharon is like this incredible draftsperson and has all these wonderful shapes. But I think my question to you when you put this in front of me was, where do you want me to look?
And I wanted you to look mainly in the center where the main water flow is, but I wanted your eye to move from the right to the left.
Okay, so like down like here, and then across.
Yeah.
Right.
But the mainstay would be hopefully in the center with that foreground rock help creating a point of interest there to draw your eye in.
Right. So my main critique was that there were kind of a lot of hard edges and areas of importance. So the main thing was to smush down those areas, and I know that I even handed you the Procreate pen, and you got to play with making some of the shapes a little more interesting, like with this rock right here. So my main thing then was just to watch out for areas where the edges were kind of equally hard, right in here, right back in here, in here. So again, just softening things. And what was interesting was when I first looked at the painting, this to me was distracting. But when you soften down those other, when we soften down the other edges on Procreate in the critique, I found that this actually worked really well. So yeah, the main thing was just to soften those edges, tell me what's important. And so if it's to be about in here, then choosing, you know, softening edges back in here, down in here. And you wanted to change out shapes too, and I thought you put in some kind of really cool, interesting shapes.
Yeah, I realized sitting here, all the foreground rocks were pointing like little torpedoes in the left, upper left corner. It's like, it was, you know, ridiculous. I didn't see that before. So I ended up just changing the one of the foreground rocks into a different shape. Hopefully that will give it a little more movement. And you had also talked about lowering the value of the upper right and lower left falls
Right.
too.
Yep.
So
yeah. So up here and in here.
so that your eye really did just stay in the center.
Right. Yeah, 'cause there's a lot going on there. So I think, you know, when you're introducing kind of these different rhythms, they have to be kept subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And the eye will notice them but not stick there. So, but yeah. So
and it's a tendency I tend to have, is when I'm painting, I get so excited about everything. You know, I think maybe we all do that a little bit.
Yes.
And you know, you want to put it all in, but it's all got to have a center of interest and weigh everything against that importance.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I talk on the site all the time about what's the story, why did you want to paint it,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know, that you want everything else to be secondary to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that can be tricky when you're doing it on site,
Yeah.
you know, and trying to make those quick decisions. And
Yeah. Yeah. Did you touch this in the studio at all when you brought it back after plein air painting?
a little bit, but then it sat for a year.
Okay.
And now I brought it back out, a little more objective eye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen you do plein air paintings, you know, so fast and just spot on, gorgeous. And it's funny, this one feels a little more like a studied studio piece to me for you.
It's a little bit bigger than I normally work for plein air. I think this is a 12 by 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to stretch myself, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I did play around with the texture of the rock a lot back in the studio.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, because
My goal with the plein air piece was really just to record the water, because I knew working from a photo was not going to capture it, and I wanted to learn
Right.
from life.
right. Yeah. All right. Shall we do drum roll and see what the
The finish, well, so far, finished so far. I
Okay,
can't say
yep.
it's done, but it's in progress.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these critiques. It doesn't have to be where one gives advice and then you go and you finish it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's just a continuing process. We have had some paintings that we just share over time. Right? So we just put Sharon's painting that she's worked on up on the easel, and this is my first impression of it, since I haven't seen it since she worked on it. And my first impression is, ooh. There's some really lovely depth in here that I like a lot. A couple things I want to point out to you guys who are seeing this, you know, over your computers, is there is a difference between the image that I'm seeing on my iPad and showing you versus in real life. Her colors here are far more subtle, and there's some really lovely gradations of some orange-ishes that are kind of missing from the photographic image.
And the dark values are even darker on the
Yes.
screen.
Yeah, there's some really rich, beautiful darks in here that the camera isn't quite picking up. So, yeah, big, huge change. Now it fits exactly where you told me where you wanted me to look in the first place. What's lovely is I hardly notice this here. Whereas before, this area up on top on the right was competing with this in here. But yeah, it beautifully flows. This area right here where the values are the exact same as the rock right behind it. So important and so beautiful. And I come down here and bam, there's that hit of value. There's our good hard edge sandwiched between this good hard edge here. Yeah, this is really lovely. I think you did a great job.
A couple other things I did with the waterfall, moving from the upper right, we'll use our pointer, is I also decreased the size of it. So that waterfall was a lot thicker. So I made it smaller in size, and then I also made this rock go up over it, hopefully to push it back even farther. I'm still uncertain about some of these edges on the lower rocks. I think some of the edges need to disappear.
Yeah.
They're a little hard edged.
A little same edge.
Yeah. So work on that, but I definitely did decrease this in value, and I think it does help to move your eye here.
Yeah. I think this in here also now talks beautifully to the reflection that's going on up here. I think lowering this in value makes that work with that better.
And I did lower this value. Actually, I made it lighter a lot.
Okay. So not as contrasted with the water, so not as hard edge.
And so the darkest darks really are back here.
Yeah.
In here. Whoops, there. And a little edge there.
It's so interesting now in that there are all these wonderful areas where the eye can really recess into and sort of wonder what's going on back in here. Wonder what's going on back in here, and yet those don't overwhelm. I agree that probably, and it'd be such a subtle thing, but in there kind of choosing one to really come forward.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing we did from the original is there was a line of rocks that just went across here. I thought that drove me nuts, so broke through that and created a dark.
That's nice. Yeah, so this is a great case then where it's just that little half step in a value. So you have that beautiful dark right in here, and then you've gone just slightly lighter right here. So it pushes back, and yet there's that little bit of interest, but it doesn't hold you there. So that's really nice.
I'm not sure if this reads well here. This rock kind of bothers me. There's water flowing over it here, we can see, but yet it's also flowing over to the side, which accounts for these. And it's like you don't see it though until it hits a ledge right there, and that's why we see the white start there. And I'm not sure that reads as a flow well.
I don't know. Yeah.
I painted what I saw, but sometimes when what we see doesn't already always look right. It's like this is true for this painting, and the other one we'll look at is if you look at something that looks a little bit odd in real life and you paint it that way, your painting is going to look odd.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I know, it's funny. I have a series of photos from when you and Barb and I, our other plein air buddy, when you and Barb and I have been out painting, and like a stupid cloud goes by, and I photograph it because I just want to have a record of a stupid cloud. I'm like, I would never paint that. Who needs a stupid cloud? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall though, really big difference. A lot of dimension in here, whereas before it was reading very flat. So yeah, nice. Yeah.
Big improvements, but still back to the drawing board, a little more to do.
But just subtle. Yeah, little changes. So yeah, I understand what you mean with that. It'd be interesting to see how you resolve that.
It will be interesting. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, so stay tuned.
Yeah, I almost wonder, not necessarily going that light over here, but giving a little sense of a shadow being cast kind of by the water. Like in
But there
between it.
wasn't, because it really is just laying flat on the rock, and just you don't really see it
Ah,
until it
but
hits
you're the
that
boss
lip.
of it.
I am. And I
You
made
you show
I
it.
made these disappear at one point, and
Okay.
I don't know, it just felt like it needed something, and I put
It does.
back,
It
and
needs those, but yeah, it does. I think without something to attach it to that, it becomes a beard.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
got to work on that.
but overall, really lovely. Yeah, because like that's such a gorgeous peak there, and then that one just coming out of the lip. It's, you know what? It's going to be one of those fixes that when you do it, it's just going to take you a few minutes because it's a subtle thing. But yeah, it's nice.
Thanks, Vianna.
You did good,
Thanks for the
Sharon.
critique.
So we'll talk about the before then.
Okay, this was painted plein air when I was in Florida over several evenings. And the light changed, and midway I did change the light. So what it was everything's being hit by this warm overhead light, which is at the top. And so the shadow next to the foreground building really was warm like that. And a couple nights into it, there was another light turned on, which you can't see in the piece here, but it was another cool light, and it made a kind of a cast shadow line, and then we see the cool sidewalk in that one part lit up, and that was just like magical to me. And it also reflected on the pole too, so I knew I had to paint that. So, you know, I mean, Brian, if you want to jump in here, what your thought was.
Okay. So a couple things. I understand where you were going with this, and that you know, I think we both love those odd light situations.
Yes.
You know, they're so much fun. So the big thing for me was that this was not reading necessarily as two different lights. I felt that this was really light back here, so light in value that it was actually lighter than the light source itself, and that the light source itself had to actually be then lightened up, that back building darkened down a bit, and then dulling down this shadow in here to make it work so that it was still in shadow. Because even though it would appear warm, it wouldn't make sense in this particular light situation for this to actually be even slightly warmer than what was going on here. So, but I love the idea of the composition. I know you had questioned like about these little fronds and stuff in here. I thought those were handled beautifully. So,
Because it was just a mass of dark there, so I felt it had to have some sky poking through there to introduce some interesting shapes to balance it out.
yeah, yeah. So did you make those up then, or did you use like another reference for those?
No,
or?
kind of just made up.
Okay, they're gorgeous. Yeah, they're really nice. But that was kind of the big idea of it, and then you can see on the time lapse. Whoops. So you can see when Sharon was here and we were holding the critique, if we go back then to the time lapse, and this is going to go really fast. So you can see the changes that I made on Procreate, just kind of showing her some of my ideas then of darkening down the building, making the light source lighter, dulling down that orange shadow that was out front, and that would help to pop out this middle area. So let's see what the result was.
Okay.
Ooh, drum roll.
And this is where I was convinced that Procreate is a good tool, not to be intimidated by it. Because when I saw this, I realized, yes, even though it's not what I saw, it reads better.
Yeah.
When that cool shadow, make it into a cool shadow, connects to the building better.
Right, right. Yeah, you have to go with the laws of light. So, and if this is your light source up here, whoops. If this is your light source up here, everything else has to be a little darker than that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then this would have to be duller than that too. So I think it's a very much a as compared to painting. You know, there's so it's the kind of thing you choose that this is the area that you want me to look at, then everything else as compared to that then gets subverted or subdued. So, all right, so let's look at.
So we're looking at the original now?
Yep, so we're going to look now at the one that she worked on. And okay, let me fix my camera. Oh, there we go. Look how snazzy that looks.
What's that?
Said, look how snazzy that looks.
A lot of, I think, improvements, a lot of changes.
A pointer works real well, but you can't work on top of with a pointer. This area in here now is much more subdued. I like that. It reads much more as a shadow. What other areas did you work on with this? That's the big one.
Well, I did change the intensity a little bit. I grayed it down as the light went over to this area. Cooled down the bottom of this building.
Which works much better.
Yeah. And actually warmed up this lit area because it really is lit by the green light and also the overhead warm light. So I was really kind of tossed between which way to go with that, but I kind of like the green there.
Yeah.
I did compromise a little bit by creating a warm edge here as it's, you know, and then gradates into a more violet. I'm still kind of working on kind of describing these reflected lights here.
I like those though. I like that those are a, that's definitely more of a, well here, what we'll do, let's take a photo and then I'll bring it up here. So what I like about those is when I put this into black and white, those are more of a color change than they are a value change. So yeah, to me that works much better. Only thing I wonder, I still feel like that building up on top may just be slightly too light. It's competing with the light source still.
So darker in value.
Yeah, just take it down like this area up in through here.
Oh.
If that was darker.
But it was white, lit by a warm light.
It wasn't as light as this though. So right now it's competing with that.
I think it's competing.
When I cover this up, I can come down more into here. Oops, except for they can't see this. What, all this brilliant stuff we just did. So, yeah, the only thing I feel, and I think this could actually be like a great competition piece, but I feel this area here is still way too light, and in here, and it's competing with the light source. If it was down a good half value,
maybe the
It's
same
not a
value
hole?
as the upper siding so that it doesn't stand out as a separate shape.
Yeah, yeah.
I could see that.
Yep, right now it's just so, that's where my eye goes and that's where my eye stays.
Yeah.
And what you've told me is you want me to look here. And
Well,
I
I
can't
don't
get
mind
off
if you
of
start
here.
out there, but then I want you to come down. That was the most intense value.
Mm-hmm.
The lightest value is in the upper part of that building. Or what about the building? Here, I'll point with the little
Okay.
pointer. Here we go. We'll trade. And what if this was as light as that? So it reads as
No.
in more interesting shape.
No, you know, if we go back to the critique I did with it in Procreate, notice how I took it down quite a bit.
Took it down.
And this is lighter.
So it reads as more one shape, yeah.
Yeah, so if we go back to this in Procreate, sorry, I have to repeat myself. So if we go back to the critique in Procreate, this is definitely darker than what you have there, and this is lighter than. So the eye reads it then of, oh yeah, that's the light source to this. So I think it reads better. It also pushes back behind things. Right now, this is so strong, it keeps pushing forward.
Yeah.
And it's not a huge difference.
Yeah, I can see how they would benefit by being more tied to the same value. So they read as one shape more.
Yeah.
Simpler. Well, another area I'm still working on is need to really redefine the highlights here. Right now, they're kind of evenly spaced and kind of sporadic. I think it needs to be designed a little better.
I think that will be resolved when this is gone, when this has been taken down in value a little bit more. Because right now I don't even notice those. Which is what, in the end, you don't really want me to notice those.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the main
But right
thing,
now I have a hard time getting off of this area. So
Okay.
I think going back to like that Procreate critique, that,
Right.
yeah, I think if that goes down in value, it's going to help a lot better.
Simplify it in one shape.
Yep.
But then when you do get your eyes over here on the left, look, it's what I call the D to D to D to D, evenly spaced shapes.
Yeah,
And we don't want that.
but I think that'll be such a simple fix once the other is taken down.
Oh yeah.
That you'll be able to resolve that. So, but yeah, I think this could actually be like a really nice competition piece.
I'm considering the value of the lit blue light here. If it needs to be darker.
Yeah, I would take it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
So again, where do you want me to look? You've told me that you like the contrasting colors, what's happening on in here. So this being a little duller, little darker, and that will make it work with these shadows, which read so beautifully, or these little light patterns. And then, yeah, taking that down will help tremendously.
Back to the drawing board. Thanks, Vianna.
You're welcome, Sharon. In the next video, Sharon will critique 2 of my paintings. Until then, thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing to the Painter's Classroom.